Okay, so let's dive into this whole TikTok ban thing. It's pretty crazy, right? This app that like 170 million Americans use just poof, gone. And what's even weirder is like both parties were for the ban. But now the new president might just bring it back. It's kind of like a political roller coaster. We've got some good stuff to look at from CNN, Forbes, and CBS News too, each with their own take on it all. By the end of this deep dive, you'll know exactly why they banned it, what's really at stake, and maybe even like get a glimpse into the future of tech and politics.
Yeah, it's wild. What I find really interesting is how fast it all happened. Executive orders, a Supreme Court ruling, and then bam, the app shut down. All in just a few months.
It's crazy how fast it all went down. I remember reading about the initial concerns, like all the worries about national security and data privacy. Lawmakers were freaking out about TikTok's parent company ByteDance being based in China.
Right. And that's the heart of the issue. Chinese law says companies have to cooperate with the government's intelligence operations. So U.S. officials are obviously worried about TikTok user data ending up in the wrong hands. I mean, we're talking about everything, where you are, what you're saying, even your private messages potentially being accessible to the Chinese government.
That's kind of scary when you think about it. Like, what happens to all that data? Are they tracking our every move? Could they even use it for blackmail later on? It's no wonder lawmakers were so worried.
Absolutely. But it gets interesting because not everyone agreed with the ban. Some senators saw it as the government overstepping its boundaries, like it was a threat to free speech.
Yeah, you're right. There are definitely good points on both sides, like this constant battle between national security and individual freedoms.
Exactly. It's like walking a tightrope. That's why it's so important to look at all sides of the story, especially with something this complicated. It's a question we have to grapple with.
For sure. So TikTok wasn't just sitting there doing nothing. They tried to calm everyone down with this thing called Project Texas. Basically, they were going to store U.S. user data on servers here in the U.S.
Right. But the Justice Department wasn't buying it. They still thought the data could find its way back to China somehow. It really shows you how hard it is to separate a global company's operations when data can travel anywhere instantly.
It's like trying to hold water in your hands. And then just when you thought things couldn't get any crazier, former President Trump jumps into the mix. First, he's all for the ban, and then suddenly he's acting like TikTok savior.
It's pretty ironic, right? Remember what he said about that 90-day extension? He straight up said he wanted to save the app. It really shows you the power struggles going on behind the scenes and all the weird political moves being made.
Yeah, it's like a whole other level of drama. And now, because of Trump's actions, the new administration has to make a move fast. Talk about pressure. And then there were all those rumors about TikTok being sold to an American company. Names like Elon Musk, Oracle, Amazon, even Microsoft were being thrown around as potential buyers.
It's crazy to think about a sale that big. You got to think about the Chinese government pushing back. They might not want to let go of something so valuable, but even if it did happen, would it actually solve the problem? Would an American company owning TikTok actually fix the data security and foreign influence issues?
That's the real question, isn't it? And in all of this chaos, it's easy to forget about the millions of people who actually make TikTok what it is. The creators. They've been caught in the middle of this whole mess. And now they're scrambling to find other platforms. Their future is totally up in the air.
Yeah, it really shows you how much technology affects our lives and how we make a living. It makes you think, how much power should any one platform have? And what happens when you lose access to it just like that?
It's a good point. It seems like TikTok was stuck between a rock and a hard place. They knew the ban was coming, even though Biden hinted he might not enforce it right away.
Exactly. And don't forget, the law came with huge fines for app stores and service providers that kept hosting TikTok after the deadline. Companies like Google and Apple were probably worried about getting in trouble. So they put the pressure on TikTok to do something.
So even with the possible reprieve from Biden, TikTok didn't want to risk those fines.
Seems like it. They decided to pull the plug themselves just hours before the ban was supposed to start.
Wow. Talk about a close call. I remember there was even talk about potential buyers for TikTok. Did that have anything to do with their decision?
Maybe. The law lets the president delay the ban for up to 90 days if there's real progress towards a sale to an American company. So the possibility of being sold could have been part of TikTok's plan.
So that 90-day extension Trump talked about was a real possibility. It's like he went from being the bad guy to potentially saving TikTok overnight. What was he really trying to do?
It's a good question. It's true that he was really tough on TikTok at first, but then he did some things that make you think he had something else in mind. Was he really worried about user data, or was there something else going on? Maybe he saw a chance to control a powerful platform. Or maybe it was a way to put pressure on the new administration.
It's hard to know what he was really thinking, but you're right, it definitely adds another layer of mystery to this whole thing. Speaking of mystery, let's talk about those potential buyers. There were the big tech companies like Elon Musk and Amazon, but then there were some unexpected names too, like Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank.
It just goes to show how influential and popular TikTok is. It attracted all kinds of people who wanted to buy it. Each one had their own reasons for wanting it and their own ideas for what to do with it. Imagine Elon Musk running TikTok. He's all about innovation and shaking things up. He could have changed the app completely.
That's a crazy thought, but what about data security? Would selling TikTok even solve the problems that caused the ban in the first place?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Even if someone bought it, the bigger issue of how to manage data in a global world wouldn't just go away. It's a much bigger problem than just TikTok. How do we keep people's information private and safe when data can cross borders so easily?
It's like trying to build a fence around the internet. But let's go back to those potential buyers for a minute. What if someone like Amazon had bought TikTok?
Well, Amazon has a huge online shopping business. If they had bought TikTok, it could have completely changed how the platform works. Imagine TikTok becoming part of Amazon's shopping experience. Creators could be selling things directly through the app.
That's actually a really cool idea. It would have been a game changer for online shopping. But let's not forget about the creators themselves. They're the heart of TikTok, and they've been stuck in the middle of this whole political battle.
Exactly. It's been really tough for them. Their work, their creativity, their whole communities have been disrupted. Imagine building a following on TikTok and then suddenly it's gone. It's got to be emotionally devastating for them.
And it's not just about their feelings. For a lot of them, TikTok is how they make money. They rely on brand sponsorships, even selling their own stuff. This ban has hit them right in the pocketbook.
You're right. And it forces us to think about some uncomfortable truths about being a creator online. How vulnerable are you if you depend on just one platform? What happens if that platform disappears?
It's a good reminder that we need to be careful about the power these tech platforms have.
It's a fragile system, and the TikTok ban has really messed things up. And what's even scarier is that this could be just the beginning. It could change how we deal with all foreign-owned tech companies in the future.
So you're saying this isn't just about TikTok, it's about the future of the internet itself.
Exactly. This whole TikTok situation has opened up a can of worms. It makes us think about national security, data privacy, and what the internet will be like in the years to come.
It's a lot to process, but let's go back to those creators for a second. What happens to them now? Where do they go?
Yeah, it's a big question. We're seeing a lot of them moving to other platforms. Some are going all in on Instagram, Reels, YouTube Shorts. Some are even trying out newer platforms like Lemonade. It's funny, though, because Lemonade is also owned by ByteDance.
Oh, wow. So even with the ban, TikTok's parent company could still be a big player in U.S. social media. It's like they're popping up everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. It shows you how complicated things are in the digital world. Just banning one app doesn't really solve the big problems of data security and foreign influence. The internet crosses borders. It's not limited by any one country.
It's true. It makes you realize these problems aren't going away anytime soon. But for the creators, this isn't just some theoretical debate. It's their jobs, their passion, their connection with millions of people. What kind of ethical dilemmas are they facing right now?
It's a really tough situation. Imagine you're a creator who built your whole career on TikTok. You know there are potential risks, but you also feel responsible to your audience, your community. Do you stay on a platform that might go against your values? Or do you leave and risk losing everything you've worked for? It's a really hard choice.
Yeah, it's like having to choose between doing what's right and making a living.
Exactly.
It's a huge weight on their shoulders. But this whole situation makes you wonder, is there another way? Is there a way to create a social media world that's more ethical and decentralized, where creators aren't tied to just one platform?
That's the billion-dollar question. We're starting to see some interesting things happening with decentralized social media. These are platforms that are owned and controlled by the users themselves. The idea is to give creators more power over their content and their data. So no one company has too much control. It's still early, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on.
It sounds promising, but also really hard to do. It's like trying to start from scratch. But if we've learned anything from this TikTok mess, it's that the way things are now isn't working. We need to find new ways to balance individual freedom, data security, and the power of these tech companies.
Absolutely. This isn't just about TikTok. It's about the future of the internet and really the future of our society. The decisions we make now will have consequences for years to come.
So where do we go from here? What are the big takeaways from this whole deep dive into the TikTok ban?
I think the most important thing to remember is that we're in a new world now. Technology politics and national security are all mixed together. We need to be honest with ourselves about the role of tech in our lives, the good and the bad, and how we can deal with all of this in a responsible way.
It's a call to action for all of us, creators, users, policymakers, everyone. We need to be informed, engaged, and ready to challenge the way things are.
I totally agree. We can't just sit back and do nothing. The future of the internet and our digital freedoms depends on us being active and involved.
That's a great point to end on. This conversation is far from over, so keep asking questions, keep searching for answers, and keep pushing for better.
Yeah, it really is. This whole TikTok thing, it's like opening Pandora's box,
Yeah.
you know. It raises all these questions about national security, data privacy, and like what the internet's going to look like in the future.
It really does. But let's circle back to the creators for a minute.
Yes.
What happens to them now? Like, where do they go?
That's the big question everyone's asking, right? We're seeing this huge shift to other platforms. Some are focusing on Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts. Some are even trying out newer platforms like Lemonade, which is kind of ironic because Lemonade is also owned by ByteDance.
Wait, really? So even with the ban, TikTok's parent company could still be a major player in U.S. social media. It's like they're playing a game of whack-a-mole.
Yeah, kinda. It just goes to show how complicated this whole digital world is. Banning one app doesn't really solve the bigger problems of data security and foreign influence. The internet crosses borders,
Right.
you can't contain it.
That's true. It
Yeah.
makes you realize that these problems are here to stay. But for the creators, this isn't some abstract debate. It's their livelihoods, their passion, their connection with millions of people. What kind of ethical dilemmas are they facing right now?
I mean, it's a tough spot to be in.
Yeah.
Imagine you're a creator and you've built your whole career on TikTok. You know there are these potential risks, but you also feel this responsibility to your audience, your community. Do you stay on a platform that might compromise your values? Or do you jump ship and risk losing everything you've worked for?
Right. It's like they're being forced to choose between their principles and their livelihood.
Yeah, it's a tough call.
Definitely. This whole situation raises a big question, though. What's the alternative? Is there a way to create a social media landscape that's more ethical, more decentralized, where creators aren't so dependent on just one platform?
That's the million-dollar question right there. We are seeing some interesting developments in decentralized social media. These are platforms that are owned and controlled by the users themselves. The idea is to give creators more control over their content and their data, so no single company has all the power.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's still early days, but it's definitely something to watch.
It sounds promising, but also incredibly challenging, like trying to reinvent the wheel.
For sure.
But if this whole TikTok saga has taught us anything, it's that the current system isn't working. We need to find new ways to balance individual freedom, data security, and the power of these big tech companies.
Absolutely. This isn't just about TikTok. It's about the future of the internet and how we want our society to function in the digital age. The decisions we make now will shape the future.
It's a lot to think about.
It is.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the TikTok ban, what are some key takeaways for our listeners?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that the lines between technology politics and national security are becoming increasingly blurred. We need to be having open and honest conversations about the role of technology in our lives.
Yeah.
We need to understand the risks, the benefits, and how to navigate this complex world responsibly.
It's a call to action for everyone, really. Creators, users, policymakers, everyone. We need to stay informed, stay engaged, and be willing to challenge the status quo.
Couldn't agree more. This isn't the time to be complacent. The future of the internet and our digital freedoms depend on us being active and involved.
Well said. And on that note, I think we'll wrap things up for today. It's clear that this conversation is far from over, so keep those questions coming, keep digging for answers, and keep demanding better. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious and stay engaged.